When I have covered Japanese games, my analysis has sometimes been criticized as Eurocentric, that I too often try to justify how Western mythological concepts influenced a Japanese game without looking at the Eastern influences. I think there are two ways of looking at this criticism. On the one hand, just because a game is made primarily by people of Japanese origin, that doesn't negate Western influence. I think it's self-evident when you look at Japanese games like Silent Hill, or Nier Automata, or Xenogears, that Western mythological and philosophical ideas took precedence. On the other hand, I will admit, I probably have been denying myself certain discoveries by ignoring Eastern traditions. For the last 2 weeks, I've been trying to rectify this injustice by looking to games and books that focus on Eastern ideas. And today, I continue to showcase the fruit of my efforts with Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Full disclosure, Sekiro is the one major Souls-type game that I haven't finished. This is primarily because I've been told by a lot of people that while the gameplay is state-of-the-art, and it is, the game didn't have a story that cries out for analysis to the same degree that Dark Souls and Bloodborne did. Still, I figured if there were any hints regarding the influence of Eastern myths on the developers, it might be worthwhile to spend a couple of hours playing Sekiro. Simultaneously, I thought it would be a good idea to look at books on Eastern alchemy, given that the other From Software games are filled to the alembic's brim with alchemical influence. In doing this, I uncovered something unbelievably brilliant about Sekiro's primary healing item, the gourd. Not only did I uncover the mythological significance of the gourd and why it is able to infinitely refill itself with water, but I also found a couple of mind-blowing links between it and other From Software games. In order to provide clear and simple answers to these mysteries, I will need to start with some of the basic ideas from Eastern alchemy and then work my way back to the gourd. Otherwise, like with a lot of alchemical literature, it's probably going to make about as much sense as a predictive text mechanism based on Charles Manson. First, I will note that the ideas we are using to explain the gourd come from Chinese Taoism, which to some might negate my theory at the outset, given Sekiro's Japanese setting. But remember, Japan was not immune to outside influence, as we clearly see with examples like the Buddha in Sekiro. Chinese Taoism was no exception. Second, the two primary goals of Western and Eastern alchemy are almost identical. One of those goals is the transmutation of lesser metals like lead into greater metals like gold. The other goal is the Philosopher's Stone, the container for the elixir of immortality. However, in Eastern alchemy, the stone tends to go by a different name, Cinnabar. Nonetheless, the composition and function of both Cinnabar and the Philosopher's Stone are virtually the same. Third, the procurement of both prizes, by both the Western and the Eastern alchemists, is as much an external process as it is an internal process. The Taoist alchemists called these the Neitan and the Weitan. In other words, only the wisest, most worthy alchemist could become immortal. The internal and external methods for attaining the gold and/or Cinnabar are numerous, ranging from actual recipes to yogic positions. For now, I want to focus on the most pertinent example, one that should sound familiar to those who have watched my other videos linking alchemy to the Soulsborne games. I double verified this method when I read about it in the two books I previously cited on screen. One is called Chinese Alchemy by J.C. Cooper, and the other is The Forge and the Crucible by Mircea Eliade. Both of them emphasize the importance of a return to the source, or a return to the matrix. What this method refers to is a return to the state of the world as it was before it came into being, to the void. Within the primordial chaotic void, the universe and all its opposites were paradoxically contained in one unperceivable seed. Every opposite of life was contained in one source, from which life would soon eternally spring. By interacting with the void, one can find the source, extract the eternity within, and use it to fashion the elixir of immortality. But how does one interact with the void? For the Eastern alchemists, this would be done internally through meditation, and externally by being alone in a dark cave. Doing both simultaneously brings us into the closest contact with the void, both within and without. Now, if done correctly, the alchemist's prize will appear, but not in the form one might expect. According to Eliade, when the alchemist is alone and meditating, he cultivates Cinnabar by taking heaven as his model and fashions earth. He seeks them by turning in on himself, and then finds that a heaven shaped like a gourd has come into spontaneous existence in his body. Indeed, when the alchemist achieves the chaotic state of unconsciousness, read as the void, he penetrates to the innermost recesses of his being. This inner space is in the form of a gourd. The implication here is that the immortality gifting substance resides within a gourd, and that it would appear within and without. But why a gourd? This is from Eliade. Quote, "The calabash, another name for gourd, plays a considerable part in Taoist ideology and folklore, and is regarded as representing the cosmos in miniature. In this gourd-shaped microcosm resides the source of life and youth. This theme, the universe having the shape of a calabash, is of undeniable antiquity. To put it more simply, the void at the beginning of time and the gourd are the same thing. Well, almost. Let's return to Sekiro for a moment. The void and the source would be more akin to the gourd seed, because the void at the beginning of time contained the seed that had yet to hatch. When it hatched and the universe sprang forth, the cosmos supposedly took the form of a gourd. Whether it is the void, the gourd seed, or the gourd fully formed, the wisest alchemist can extract from it the substance that gives life. Before I move on, there is one potential criticism I want to address. Eliade explicitly said that within the gourd is the Cinnabar, which is different from the water that Sekiro drinks from his gourd. What one needs to keep in mind about alchemy is that there is a reason science replaced it following the Enlightenment era. It's because it's inconsistent. However, what alchemists can do is find the common patterns among the ideas and extract the common truths from therein. So for example, the Cinnabar was its own thing, but it would also be equated with gold or the Western philosopher's stone. Most importantly, it was also equated with water. Water, in Chinese alchemy, was the fundamental material of creation, the life substance, the waters of life, and the prima materia. And prima materia was the name given by the alchemists to the void. Whether it is in the form of cinnabar, gold, or the rejuvenating water, all of them spring forth from the infinite source of life. Now here's where the good stuff begins. Some of you who have been watching my alchemy videos for a while now should easily recognize the term prima materia. I have linked that concept to the Age of Ancients from Dark Souls and the Crucible from Elden Ring. Both of them were the source of all life, the void, in their respective universes. And several characters in those games were trying to find ways to make contact with both in order to obtain immortality. It should also be noted that immortal dragons are associated with both the Age of Ancients and the Crucible. This is appropriate because the rejuvenating waters in Sekiro spring from the blood of dragons. In summary, the gourd in Sekiro is simply a microcosm, a handheld version of what the Crucible, the Age of Ancients, and the dragons in all these games are. The closer we are to their proximity, the closer we become to immortality. And that's not even the most mind-blowing part. Saddle up, because this is about to get good. No pun intended. If you will recall, I said that the void and the source were a paradoxical union of opposites. Polar opposites, like life and death, male and female, People who love Dark Souls 2 and those who hate it were all contained in this seed. It was the job of the alchemist to produce superior concoctions by uniting opposites. This was true for the Western as well as the Eastern alchemists. It is also true that in order to determine which opposites to unify, that alchemists of the West and East would project gender onto the material world. Specifically, for the Chinese Taoists, they projected the feminine yin and the masculine yang. I will cite two pertinent examples. First, the sun, whose corresponding metal was gold, was masculine, and the moon, whose corresponding metal was silver, was feminine. This is why, in Dark Souls, the character Gwendolyn was raised as a girl even though he was a boy. This is because he was born with an affinity for moon-related magic. The second example is the union of the colors red and white, which Cooper talks about in his book. Quote, "In the process of obtaining the elixir, there are the stages of red and white, familiar to both East and West. For the Chinese, they would sometimes use the gourd as an alchemic tool to unite red and white elements." Quote, "It was believed that the elixir of immortality could be produced through the distilling of red cinnabar placed in the upper chamber of the gourd and mercury placed in the lower chamber. The marriage of these two substances was a sexual metaphor for the union of semen and menstrual blood to create life. This type of procedure and its symbolism is confirmed by Eliade. One way the Chinese alchemists would try to produce the gourd materially was by hanging upside down while meditating. This would, supposedly, cause a man's semen to travel up his body into the recesses of his brain, where the blood and the semen would form the alchemical embryo. This area of the brain went by many names, including Tantian, the Cinnabar fields, and most importantly, Kunlun, a name given to a mountain of mythical importance. Eliade notes that the mountain of Kunlun has two tiers, an upright circular cone surmounted by an inverted one, similar to the alchemist's furnace. In this way, Eliade states that both Kunlun and the gourd were images of the world in little, a universe in miniature. The unity of red and white, male and female, is something that we see in Elden Ring with the characters of Radagon and Marika. This is because they were both the same person until Radagon split off from Marika. As pointed out by a fellow YouTuber named Ziostorm, this union of male and female is similar to a concept from Western alchemy known as the Rebis. According to the English alchemist of the 15th century, George Ripley, the Rebis was the personification of the philosopher's stone, because of this union of male and female. But note that I said personification, because the man and the woman weren't actually being united. It was the elements they represented being united. Those elements were sulfur and mercury. Now hold on to your seats, guys, because this is the good part. What is produced when you actually unify sulfur and mercury in real life? You get mercury sulfide. And what is the non-scientific name for mercury sulfide? Cinnabar.
But wait! There's more!
What other From Software game features the colors red and white? That would be Bloodborne. In that game, you can become a pseudo-immortal god by defeating the Moon Presence boss at the end of the game, thereby attaining that game's version of the elixir, Pale Blood. What color is the moon in that game? At times, it is white, but it can also be red. By way of the red and white moon, one may transcend. If you want to learn more about Bloodborne's relation to alchemical ideas, check out my video titled Bloodborne's Hidden Secret to Becoming a God, which I will link in the description box. Once again, I am blown away by the symbolic depth these games possess. I don't know if it's Miyazaki or somebody else from the team that is doing this, but whoever it is, he really knows his shit. Anyways, that does it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a like before you tune out. It's quick, free, and helps me out a lot. By the way, if you like the type of in-depth analysis that I do here, please consider supporting me on Patreon, Subscribestar, or joining my YouTube members section. I will leave a link to all of those in the description box below. Thanks guys, and until next time, remember to fear the old blood, don't you dare go hollow, something tarnished, stay yellow. Bye-bye.